This is not just a black and brown issue. This is an American issue. Every American has to do their part, and we all have to work together.
My name is Roger Campbell II. Originally from Philadelphia, but grew up in South Florida, just outside of Fort Lauderdale, a little town called Coral Springs. I'm a software engineer, activist, and a mentor. Pride myself on education, just in general sense of it, not so much the traditional sense. And it's part of something that I do as an industry and as a job. So I wrote this article probably a week or so after George Floyd was murdered by police. At the time, a lot of companies around the nation were doing town halls and open sessions for employees to be able to have a place to talk and communicate about what was going on in the United States, just in general, and things that have been happening forever. And one of the burning questions people kept asking was like, how could they help? And part of what disturbed me was the fact that people were asking how they could help without trying to understand what was going on. And I was very thankful for my company that I was working with at the time for giving us the space, but I was a little upset by the way in which questions were asked. And from that frustration and I think lack of empathy felt for people in my position, that article was birthed. It kind of started off as just me jotting down my thoughts and then proceeded into something that became the speech. Oddly enough, on June 6th, you couldn't get this far up. Behind us, there were barricades and military personnel. And I didn't walk into the day knowing that I was going to read my article. It wasn't written to be an article originally. It was meant to just be a translation of my thoughts for people to be able to hear them. And when I got here that day, I was standing on the line holding this very sign behind me. And something inside of me told me just to speak. I wrote this article and I wanted people to hear it, and there was an actual demonstration that was going to happen and it hadn't started yet, but there were people down here and it looked like they were waiting for something. And funny enough, I tried to tell another reporter about my speech, and they kind of blew me off a little bit. And when they did that, something inside of me told me, Roger, you know what, read it. Rather than just trying to give it to somebody to read, let people hear it from your own mouth. So I went from the line that we were standing on right here, it was 4 or 5 of us, my sister and my girlfriend included, and walked down the steps and just asked everybody if they were okay with me speaking. And I just spoke.
My name is Roger Campbell II, and I wrote an article recently, and I want to read it to everyone, if that's okay, if y'all don't mind. The name of this article is Black Lives, a glance through the looking glass.
I didn't walk into reading that thinking that it was going to get much more than a couple people listening, let alone for it to be recorded. I didn't even know it was being recorded to that extent when it was happening. It wasn't until 2 or 3 days afterwards that Monique found me on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I hope it's okay, but I filmed your speech and I would love for you to see it and tell me what you think. And it was just I want to say a cosmic event of destiny that happened. And then for her to find me, for her to be there and to catch me from walking down the stairs to starting to read the speech, to then catching it when someone gave me a mic to actually so everyone could hear me. And then in turn, her submitting that and it winning the gold telly, it just was more than I could have ever expected when I started to jot those notes down on a piece of paper during a Zoom call at a company town hall. Just never in my life would I have thought that would have happened, and I am humbled by the experience.
What you must understand is that our anger and grief does not just stem from George Floyd's horrendous murder. It is a byproduct of the unanswered genocides of countless black and brown human beings that have been performed by not only police, but normal citizens for as far back as any living black or brown American can remember.
I don't know if words will do it justice. Never in my life have I ever done anything like that before, but walking into it, my hands were shaking when I first started reading my speech, and by the end of it, they still were. And there was this instant feeling of relief, sadness, happiness, joy, that I was able to do it, that I did do it, that it was received so well, and it was just breathtaking. I was proud, I was scared, just a hodgepodge of emotions, but I guess the best way to sum it up is just that it felt amazing. It felt amazing to be able to share that with all these people gathered to hear these type of things, to hear how we as Black and brown Americans feel, and to be there and stand in solidarity. So just to be able to share how I felt in that moment and for it to be received well, it was just an amazing feeling. One of the resonating words that I like people to take away from my speech is to find actionable solutions. And I think in order for us to have actionable solutions, you have to plan them out and you have to enact them. This past year, I lost my mother, and I lost her actually right after I said this speech, about 2 or 3 weeks later. And losing her really hurt, and it kind of took away the drive I've had to write, not in the sense of not wanting to, but just not having that in my heart in the moment. So what I did was I forwarded that momentum and those emotions of losing my mother into trying to help others. And since then, I've been focused on educating and education in general. And as a software engineer, I feel the best thing I can do is to bring my understanding of technology and teaching others. There's this bit of a cultural acceptance that people shouldn't say what they think sometimes, or shouldn't do what speaks to their heart out of just wanting to be accepted. And if I would have let that drive me, I never would have written the article. One step forward from that, I never would have shared it with my company and gotten such a good response with the company I was working with. And take that one step further, if I never would have listened to that thought I had in my heart that told me to go and read it, it never would have been caught on film. And it never in turn would have won an award. So I think the biggest thing that I would like people to take away from this is when you see something that you feel is unjust and isn't right, and you feel you have something to say about it, you should go with what your gut and what your heart is telling you, because that's how change is made. That's how a difference is made, is by people standing up and speaking for what they think is right. And regardless of how you think other people are going to take it, sometimes it's just that much more important for you to satisfy it for yourself. And then you can just see what happens. So directly to that question, I tell people to follow their heart and speak up when they see something wrong. I think it's the best thing any of us can do, and that's how we can all make actionable solutions and make things better for everyone.